let's jump into some questions. Now, as I always have to say, the views and opinions of Randy do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of New Leaf Publishing Group, Master Books, any of its subsidiaries, or Kristen Pratt or my children. So just so that there's an indemnification of everybody else, that everyone knows they're not responsible for the things that I say. So good. Okay. Charity. Let's see. Any advice for developing stamina? Soon to be 8-year-old with signs of dyslexia. She gets overstimulated easy, likes spending a lot of time lounging and daydreaming. Want to teach her how to persevere in difficult. When things are difficult, and be self-motivated instead of having to prod and push me, which makes both of us miserable. Currently, we only get 2 or 3 subjects in a day, including morning time together and Bible time. Trying to focus on handwriting now, but doesn't leave much stamina, compliance, reading practice, wows the brain, all the importance for growth. She loves Let's Talk Science, usually math. I also have a 2.5 and 5-year-old, almost 10-year-old. Okay, so ADHD is on a spectrum, so I'm not really giving advice. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself, because my kids have all identified me as ADHD, so I've spent a fair amount of time researching it. The thing about ADHD is some people think of it as like almost hyperactivity, but the reality is for some of us, there can be a sleepy brain. And so when something is interesting or fun, the brain comes alive. And when the brain comes alive for me, I can hyper-focus. Okay? So that hyper-focus is, it's a superpower. So when I was a kid, like I enjoyed field and track. I enjoyed long jumping. So hours and hours and hours, I would research how to get more height and length out of my jump. I would research, speed, the lift, all of these things. I even had, I would listen to people, I would talk to people about it, and then I would go and practice for hours jumping into a sand pile. That was like a hyper-focused thing for me because I was like there. There's been different skills that I've developed in my life because I was interested. It was a special type of knife called a butterfly knife, and when I got it, my brother had one, and I had one, and some of the friends had one. But for me, my brain came alive with that thing, and I practiced that thing for hours. I could do so many different flips and holds and maneuvers with it, but it was just because my brain was alive. Now, on the flip side, my brain when it doesn't like something, I go into sleep mode. Like, it's not just I'm strong-willed. It's my brain is dead to this topic. I am struggling to come alive. Now, if there's a deadline or something that forces me to do that, I can awaken to do a deadline. But I'm not actually learning all the time. I can just kind of come alive to make it happen. I would spend hours sitting in school basically doing nothing, right? Because my brain was just not there. I just couldn't be there. Daydreaming, I can daydream. That was fun. My brain comes alive because that's what's happening. So when you're talking about this, I think what you have to look at is, number one, if it's loaded up too heavy, that's not good. And then you may have to tailor this a little bit too, where if there are subjects that are liked, she loves science, Let's Talk Science, and she likes math, so she's got more of a technical ability. Okay, so maybe with things like history, you focus on the inventions. Like, okay, the cotton gin, right? Like, as we look at the cotton gin in a certain period of time, that was an amazing device. And we can spend a lot of time understanding that. We could look at people like Edison or Ford and the inventions in their workshops, and learn then about what was going on in history, what made them special, all of that type of thing. And so that's like things that we can do to kind of help. So I think it's challenging Charity. I think when you're dealing with somebody with ADHD, I think it can be a challenge, and I think it's actually worth redoing the research yourself on understanding, almost like what are the management tools. And can I tell you something? To me, ADHD is a superpower. The other word for ADHD is CEO. Like, because they have a macro view. They see everything, right? They're easily distracted because they see everything. They don't do well with the details. But oftentimes, they actually can see this big picture and understand how all the pieces fit together into the big picture. And that's where I would say, like, if I walk into, I can be very creative. I see the end product when I look at a book. Like when I was involved in this, I see you holding this book, and I see like all the mechanics of it and that type of thing. So the other thing is the ability to actually hyper focus on areas that I need to excel in. So all of that, I think, because every child is different, but what you've got to do is awaken the brain. Somebody later, I want to see who this is. The next quote, the next one, Caitlin. Caitlin did like the perfect follow-up. She has a kiddo who's a slowpoke, has the ability to go fast occasionally for fun things and sweets. Okay, what two things happen with fun things and sweets? Dopamine. Okay, so hang on to the dopamine. Let's see, then he somehow manages to be motivated and hurry up. Yeah, see, his brain comes alive. His brain came alive for the dopamine of the sweet or the fun things. His slowness and inefficiency is affecting the entire family, holds us back from accomplishing everything we need to do in a timely manner. I take a 5-minute job, turn it into 60 minutes or more. Tried all kinds of ways to motivate and teach him, yet he continues to live like a sloth. Any tips, advice? He's the youngest of the family and tends to think negatively. He's 9 years old. So what just got me, Caitlin, on that is he thinks negatively. For me, negativity turns my brain back on. And so I find myself using negativity to keep my brain awake. And I've had to start catching myself, oh, I get what's happening. Because the people around me are affected by my negativity. I'm using it as a tool to wake my brain up, but they're actually clinging to the negativity. And so I have to realize the effect that negativity has had. And when I was young, my parents would say I was always negative. They thought I had a bad attitude with things. For me, that was just a way for me to get my brain to come alive. And so once it did, I could do that. And then the dopamine side, that's an area why we have to be careful with ADHD. It's very easy to become addicted to dopamine things, games, bad areas of the web, those type of things, because that awakens the brain. And so I think once you kind of realize, like, it's really fascinating to do some research on adults with ADHD. Most of us, like ADHD wasn't a thing. So now that I'm looking and I'm listening to people and professional people who have ADHD who live successfully, but this even affects like relationships, and our performance at work, all of these things. And so for me, it's a superpower. But when I was younger, it was definitely not considered a superpower because I did all those same things, Caitlin. It would just take me forever to get motivated to do things. And if I wasn't motivated, it was like I just couldn't do it. So I'd end up with detention every night. I'd end up, with extra discipline. That just was like that was using up more of my brain, right? So, for these, I think it's worth the research of developing plans for overcoming ADHD, but then identifying that a lot of the education system and education that's written is written for a neurotypical child. Neurotypical would mean your average lives in society student and can function. Well, if the average student can do 2 pages of work with 10 questions a day, right? That's what we would expect. A atypical neuroatypical child would struggle because of some of those challenges. So there's so many weird things. Like sometimes some kids with ADHD, if they drink Mountain Dew, right, which would have more of an effect, like for some it would be like high sugar, high caffeine, like whoo. What that does sometimes is it actually has a reverse effect. So in my life, like I've always, I would say almost like caffeine doesn't bother me until I realized caffeine probably has almost a negative effect. It's a relaxant for me. It's not something that makes me hyper. It may give me a little bit of a boost physiological, but it's not necessarily something like that. I have a son that's very much like me, and very much ADHD. When he was little, he would actually take coffee grounds and eat them, and it was always like, stop doing that, right? But I think in some ways it was because he had actually found a way to calm himself down. So that was a lot. Hopefully there was something in there, Caitlin, to take on too.